رمضان يا خير الشهور يا فضل رحمن غفور.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Amma ba'du fa'auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. One of the sons of the promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam was Hazrat Sahibzada Mirza Bashir Ahmad Sahib radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, and in our Jamaat he is also known as Hazrat Qamarul Anbiya, the moon of the prophets. And Allah Ta'ala had bestowed him with immense knowledge and was also very spiritual and very close to Allah Ta'ala. One can imagine that a person who is a son of a prophet and raised within the household of the prophet and raised by the prophet, and Nabi bhi wo jo Masih Maud alayhi salatu wassalam, and not just any other prophet but someone of a very high stature, even among the prophets of Allah Almighty. And then happens to be a younger brother to a Khalifa. And then when he was young, his tarbiyat was also done, of course, by Hazrat al-Mu'mineen, Hazrat Amma Jana radiyallahu ta'ala anha. Then Hazrat Khalifa Awal radiyallahu ta'ala anha also played a very significant role in the tarbiyat of Sayyidina Qamarul Anbiya radiyallahu ta'ala anha. So Hazrat Qamarul Anbiya, Allah Ta'ala blessed him to write on many subjects. And one of those subjects was Tarbiyat-e-Awlad, how to raise our kids in an Islamic way. Now many people think of their own ways, how best to raise their kids, whether they be in the East or in the West. But oftentimes it happens that they actually end up missing the mark. It's because they are thinking on their own how to raise their kids rather than looking at the Islamic sources and then deciding based on that how best to raise their kids. So the topic for today's dars is going to be how to raise our kids, and I will share 10 principles based on Islamic teachings that Hazrat Mian Sahib, Qamarul Anbiya radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, Mian Bashir Ahmad Sahib radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, had penned down in his book. So the very first point which he raises is that all these 10 points which are going to be presented here today, they are the summary of Islamic teachings. So if you take all the Islamic teachings, this is the essence of it. The very first point which he raises, I believe, is probably one of the most important ones. He says, Musalman mard deendar aur ba akhlaq beviyon ke saath shaadiyan kare. That Muslim men should choose such wives for themselves who are righteous as well as upright. Now, he says, ताकि न सिर्फ उनका घर उनकी अपनी ज़िंदगी में जन्नत का नमूना बने, बल्कि औलाद के लिए भी नेक तरबियत और नेक नमूना मुयस्सर आने से दायमी बरकत का दौर कायम हो जाएगा. He says not only if you were to follow this teaching would your own family life be heavenly, but as a matter of fact you'll be able to do the tarbiyah much easily. Now, time and again, I have seen many individuals, when they overlook this basic principle, they pay the price. And I have seen them time and again, and many of you have also seen such families that are now broken. Hazrat Aqdas Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam used to say, Khishte awwal chun agar mamar kaj Khishte awal chun hajma markaj, ta suraya miravad divarkaj. That if the bricklayer puts the first brick crooked in the foundation, then regardless of how high you build upon that foundation, since the first brick was crooked, the ultimate building, even if it reaches the sky, it's going to be crooked. It's not going to be straight. And this is the building block. This is the very first step. This is why in Islam, the importance is given to marry within the community. Hazrat Aqdas Masih Maud has also mentioned that you should marry within the Jamaat. What is the purpose of shadi? What is the purpose of marriage? The purpose of marriage is that marriage would complete your faith. You bring half of your faith and the other person brings the other half. And when you come together, it completes your faith, it completes your taqwa. Now imagine if you choose a life partner for yourself who does not follow the teachings of Islam, amdeed. You're missing half of that. And whatever amount of spirituality you have, there is a very high probability, if it is not going to be complemented by your life partner, you'll end up even losing that. And that's what I have seen. Many individuals who choose to go outside the Jamaat to marry, even if they get their spouse to convert for the sake of marriage. Once the marriage happens, the converts oftentimes who have converted for the sake of marriage don't come. And I'm not saying that this is what happens every single time. But this is what I have seen most of the time. There are exceptions, yes. But rules are not based on exceptions. So when we give priority to everything else other than taqwa, other than righteousness, then this is the end result. Holy Prophet ﷺ has mentioned this. He said that تُنْكَحُ الْمَرْأَةُ لِأَرْبَعٍ لِمَالِهَا, that you marry a woman for 4 reasons. Either for her wealth, or for her beauty, or for the fact that she belongs to a noble family, her social status that she enjoys in society, or her righteousness, deendari. فَاظْفُرْ بِذَاتِ الدِّينِ تَرِبَتْ يَدَاكَ. So give precedence to a righteous person. If you don't, you'll end up being a loser in the end. These are the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, when myself included, when any missionary or anyone who's giving the wa'az, and we talk about this subject matter, many individuals don't appreciate this. They don't like this. They say, well, Islam gives the permission to men to marry outside. Yes, Islam does give the permission, but under circumstances that you're not able to find a life partner within the Jamaat. But the problem is, many times individuals who want to marry outside the Jamaat, they're not looking within. They're not looking in the Jamaat. They're looking outside. I'm not pointing any fingers. My point is, those who have already married outside the Jamaat, there's nothing we can do for them. But the ones who are yet to marry, it is my responsibility to show them that, look, this is what happens when you put the teachings of Islam and Ahmadiyya to one side and give preference to whatever you like. That factor of, this is what I desire versus the teachings of Islam, well, this will be the end result. Time and again. So I have seen when men convert and they get married, to a believing girl, afterwards, 80-90% of the time, once they get married, they don't show up. And along with it goes the girl as well. Sometimes what happens is that the girl is the one who's converting. And the guy is the one who's a believing man. And oftentimes, even they don't show up. The boy who developed relationships outside and then wanted to get married to a girl, the very first step he took in order to find a life partner was based on something which was haram. Dating is haram in Islam. No matter how you look at it, no matter how you word it, if it is dating, it is haram. So when the first stage, when the first brick which is laid is haram, then the end result is going to be haram. When the marriage of a convert breaks, and this is extremely unfortunate, when the marriage of a convert ends in separation or divorce, the person who had converted almost always leave MDA as well. Because they never came into MDA for the sake of Allah Ta'ala. They came for the sake of the individual. And when things didn't work out with that individual, MDA goes out the door for them. MDA Islam goes out the door for them. When I have to perform counseling for such individuals before they are getting married, I tell them this. But unfortunately, it rarely works. Someone who has already made up their mind, there's nothing you can do to help them in that situation. So the best thing that we can do is, we all are parents. And many youngsters are sitting here who will one day, inshallah ta'ala, be, in very near future, they will be getting married. So these points are for all of us to keep in mind. Point number 2. हर औरत खुद भी दीनदार बने और दीन का इल्म सीखे और फिर दीन के अहकाम के मुताबिक अपना अमल बनाए, ताकि वो घर की चार दीवारी में दीन का चर्चा रखने, दीन की तालीम देने और दीन के मुताबिक अमली नमूना पेश करने के ज़रिए अपने बच्चों की ज़िंदगियों को बचपन से ही दीनदारी और नेकी के रास्ते पर डाल सके। अच्छी औलाद के लिए अच्छी माँ का वजूद एक बिल्कुल बुनियादी चीज़ है और इक्सीर का हुक्म रखती है, काश दुनिया इस हकीकत को समझे। So the second point is that every woman must try to become spiritual and righteous and should acquaint herself with religious knowledge. Many of the points that are going to be presented are going to be talking about ladies. And sometimes when it happens that, in a given dars, if the subject matter is more related to ladies, I end up getting messages afterwards. That why were you talking about ladies more so than the gents? I'm not the one who made the teachings of Islam. Allah Ta'ala did. And Allah Ta'ala knows best which things are related to which gender. Now you'll notice whenever it talks about working outside the house, hard labor, winning the bread, rozi roti kamana, it almost exclusively speaks to men. Almost exclusively. Because that is the primary responsibility of the man, to go outside, work for whatever number of hours, earn the money, come home and put that money in the hands of the wife. And then the wife's responsibility is twofold. Number one, take care of the household and take care of the kids. Now I do understand sometimes the dynamics are such, especially here in the West in this day and age, where the wife is also working. The job of the wife, if she has a job, 9 to 5 job outside, she has to understand that that is secondary as far as Islam is concerned. Islam puts this responsibility of raising kids primarily on the wife, on the mother. Now that doesn't mean that the men go scot-free. That doesn't mean that the men have zero responsibility. Of course they do have responsibility. When they come home, then they have to help with the chores at home and they have to play their part in the tarbiyat awlad. But because it is mothers who spend most amount of time with the kids, Allah Ta'ala has placed this responsibility on their shoulders. And this is what I have noticed as well, that instead of fathers, mothers are more able to connect with their children. Fathers oftentimes have a very strict stance. And maybe perhaps this is something which is innate and natural to them. But Allah Ta'ala has created mothers very soft-hearted. So this is one of the reasons why the responsibility of raising children is on the shoulders of the mothers. Now, many times mothers don't even know the basics of fiqh. They don't even know that for example, in their certain days of the month, when they are to take time off from ibadat, many times many women don't even know that. And they might end up doing something that Allah Ta'ala is exclusively telling them not to do. So the very basic thing is that women should at least acquaint themselves with the basics of fiqh knowledge. Because eventually, it will be they who will be teaching their young kids many things. I remember in my household, it was not my father who taught me how to pray. My father was always busy. He rarely had time. His job was to provide for us. And many a times that meant that he had to travel from one city to another city, one province to another, and sometimes even international travel. That left my mother alone. And even to this day, I remember exactly which house, which room, what time of the day my mother started to teach me how to pray. It's etched on my brain. And it will always remain with me, inshallah ta'ala. And for that, I'm extremely grateful to my mother. She taught me how to pray. But if my mother did not know how to pray herself, there is no way she would be able to teach those things to me. When I was a young child, many a times I had questions. Why do we have to read namaz? Why do I have to read the Quran? Why can I not just read it in Urdu language, which is my mother tongue? Why do I have to read it in Arabic when I don't even understand Arabic language, for example? Back then I didn't understand the Arabic language. So all these questions, my mother would be able to answer them for me. Now, alhamdulillah, we have MTA. So many of the things we can learn from MTA. But children find it difficult to sit in front of MTA for extended period of time. This is where mothers come in. They should watch MTA. Our beloved Imam, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih al-Khamis Sayyidahullah has mentioned that every single day, you should watch MTA for at least 1 hour. If you don't have the time, at least dedicate one television in the house, one screen in the house, and put MTA on it. Coming and going, you might end up hearing something which will end up benefiting you. So this is why watching MTA is also very important, and using that as a tool to learn religious knowledge is imperative on both men and women of the household. Point number 3 is, बच्चों की तरबियत का आगाज उनकी वलादत के साथ ही हो जाना चाहिए, और ख़्वाह वो बज़ाहिर माँ बाप की बात समझें या ना समझें, बल्कि खुद वो बज़ाहिर अपनी आंखें और कान इस्तेमाल कर सकें या ना कर सकें, माँ बाप को यही समझना चाहिए कि वो हमारे हर फेल को देख रहे और हमारे हर कौल को सुन रहे हैं. इस्लाम ने बच्चे की पैदाइश के साथ ही उसके कान में अजान दिलाकर इसी नफ्सियाती नुक्ते की तरफ इशारा किया है. Now this is another point that Mia Sahib mentions. He says that from the very get-go, from the very birth of the child, their upbringing starts. And whether the child can see and hear or not, the parents, when they are around their child, should act as if their child can see what they're doing and can understand it. Many a times, parents speak with one another in a certain way that they shouldn't be speaking in front of kids. Sometimes some fathers have the habit of cursing, especially the ones who come from Punjabi culture. Maybe in that culture it might be something that is considered normal, but in Islam it's not. When you're cursing, you're committing a sin. And many people have the habit of cursing as if it's part of their day-to-day speech. And when they would be talking to their wives, they would speak in that manner while their kids are around, and they're watching and they're observing. So Hazrat Mia Sahib says that even if your kids are too small to understand, this is your point of tarbiyat. You should reform yourself, because eventually your children would imitate you. If the father has the habit of throwing things around, guess what the boys are going to do? The boys in that household are also going to learn that it is normal that when you get angry, you pick up things and you smash them. If the husband is in the habit of beating his wife, unfortunately, guess what the boys are going to think? That it's okay to beat their sisters. And guess what the daughters are going to learn? They're going to learn that this is what marriage is. That the husband beats up the wife, and this is what the norm is. The husband who beats his wife, unfortunately, would never withstand someone else beating his daughter. Never. किसी और की लड़की को जब लेकर आते हैं और उसके ऊपर जुल्म करते हैं, महसूस नहीं करते. अपनी लड़की पे जब जुल्म होता है तो उस वक्त खुदा याद आ जाता है. Where is your Where are your feelings when you're abusing someone else's daughter, who's your wife? And then same goes on the ladies' side. When the mothers, the wives, in the absence of the father, when the father is at work or is traveling somewhere, and they start to badmouth the father in front of the children, oh, your father is like this. You know the reason your father is not here and it's your birthday is because he has to go take care of his mother and he has to go and see his siblings. Number one, we don't celebrate birthdays. At least not the way that other people do. And number two, this is just one example. When mothers are going to poison the minds of their children against their own father, their own marriages, this is indicative that their own marriage is a failure. And when their own marriage is a failure, they're raising kids who are most likely going to have failed marriages of their own. Unfortunately. I'm not saying that this is going to happen every single time, but many a times. Look, the figures of Jamaat are not alien to you and they're not alien to me. I've been here in this Jamaat for better part of 7 months or so. And I've already dealt with a lot of domestic cases. So I know the problems that exist. So I know what I'm talking about. I'm not just presenting this out of thin air. These are the real issues. Point number 4, Mia Saab says, is माओं का फर्ज है कि बचपन में ही अपने बच्चों के दिलों में ईमान बिल गैब का तसव्वुर रासिख कर दें और उनकी तबीयत में ये बात पुख्ता तौर पर जमा दें कि इस दुनियाए शहूद में रूहानी और मादी निज़ाम की हकीकी तारें एक पर्दा गैब के पीछे से खींची जा रही हैं, जिसका मरकजी नुक्ता खुदा है और बाकी अरकान फरिश्ते और किताबें और रसूल और यौम आखिर और तकदीर खैर और शर हैं। जिस शख्स ने इस नुक्ते को पा लिया उसके लिए फ़लसफ़ा मौत और हयात एक खुला हुआ मंशूर बनकर सामने आ जाता है। Point number 4 is to inculcate in our children from a very get-go the belief in the unseen. How do you develop the belief in the unseen? One thing that we as parents can do is to tell our kids that, look, Allah, one of the attributes of our Allah is that He is as-Sami, He hears everything. Another attribute of Allah Ta'ala is that He is Al-Khabir, He is aware of everything. And one of His attributes is Al-Basir, He sees everything. Allah Ta'ala says, Alimun bidhati sudur, He even knows what is in our hearts. Things that we don't even verbally say out loud, He is aware of those things. I have had this conversation with my daughters several times. And they're very young. My eldest is 6 and the younger one is 3. But I have this conversation with them every now and then, and I know my wife does on regular basis as well. Because when you start having these conversations with children, especially when they're young, from a very get-go, they are raised with God consciousness. They know that there is an entity. They might not be able to see this entity with their eyes, but this entity is watching them, is aware of their actions. So, the way it works for children is the same way that it works for us, the adults as well. And I've given this example previously as well, that when you're at an intersection and it is red light and you don't see anybody else, you don't see a cop, you don't see a camera, that's when you're tested, your iman is tested. Because at that time shaitan is telling you, okay, well, no one is watching, you can cross the light, you can break the red light, there is no cop here, they're not going to stop you or give you a ticket, there is no red light camera, so you're not going to get a ticket. So just do it, nobody's watching, you're not going to hurt anyone. But that's where your iman is tested. We are taught in Islam to not break the law of the land. Abide by, the rules and regulations, unless of course they go against the rules and regulations and the law of Allah Ta'ala. Then the word of Allah Ta'ala supersedes everything else. But this example, the way it is true for us, it is also, true for young children. And this is what we can teach them. And we should teach them. Point number 5, माओं का फर्ज है कि वो अपने बच्चों को बचपन से ही नमाज का पाबंद बनाए. Sometimes parents wait that, okay, when our children become 7 years of age, we'll start teaching them then. Some wait until the kids are 10 years of age, and some don't even teach at that time. Some parents are of the opinion that they don't even need to bring their kids to the masjid or to the Atfal class or the Nasirat class or Tar Academy or Nasir Academy or Masroor Academy, whatever academy we have. Some parents say that we'll teach our kids on our own, fine. If you're doing it, then alhamdulillah. But many of the individuals who are not bringing their kids, they don't teach them at home either. And sometimes some parents bring their kids here to the masjid, at the masjid, leave them here, and they think that, okay, we've done our part, this is it. The child should automatically now learn salat as if it is the responsibility of the local murabbi or the local teacher in Tar Academy, that it is their responsibility to teach the children salat. If it is my responsibility or Nazim Sahib Atfal's responsibility or Secretary Nasrat's responsibility to teach your kids akhlaqiyat and about Allah Ta'ala and about namaz, then what is your job? When children come to Tar Academy, they learn many things, right? They spend 6 levels, I think there are of Tar Academy, 6 or more. And year after year after year after year, we teach these things to them. When they turn a certain age, 15 or 16, Tar Academy ends for them. And then they're on their own with you, the parents. And even in the presence of Tar Academy operates for what? How many hours? 2 hours? 3 hours? Maximum 4 hours? And even that, it's once a week. What about the rest of the 6 days? They're not with us, they're with you. And even on the day of Tar Academy, other than 2-3 hours, they're here. Other than that, they're with you, the parents. So parents have to stand up and take this responsibility. Namaz is the most important thing. If there is no namaz, there is nothing. Holy Prophet ﷺ has said that the difference between a mu'min, believer, and a disbeliever is leaving of salat. When a believer leaves salat, he becomes a disbeliever. It's as simple as that. Point number 6. माओं का फर्ज है कि अपने बच्चों में बचपन से ही इन्फाक फी सबीलिल्लाह और दीन के लिए खर्च करने की आदत डालें और उनमें ये एहसास पैदा कराएं कि हर चीज़ जो उन्हें खुदा की तरफ से मिली है, खा वो माल है या दिलो दिमाग की ताकतें हैं या इल्म है या औकात ज़िंदगी हैं, इन सब में से खुदा और जमात का हिस्सा निकालें और ख़ुसूसन उन्हें बचपन में ही अपने हाथ से चंदा देने और गरीबों की मदद करने और जमाती कामों में अपने वक्त का हिस्सा खर्च करने का आदी बनाएं. ये हुक्म नमाज के बाद इस्लाम का दूसरा सतून है. Look how important this point is, that parents should inculcate the habit of spending in the way of Allah Ta'ala in the children from the very get-go. When the kids are young and they understand the concept of money, you should give them the money and then tell them that from this you are supposed to pay some sadaqah, some chanda. Make them do this with their own hands so they understand that, okay, this is what I'm required to do by Allah Ta'ala. But unfortunately, many parents don't pay chanda. How can they ask their kids to take care of this? And this is the second pillar of Islam. Spending in the way of Allah. Some people say, oh, don't worry, we don't need to pay chanda. Chanda is optional. Zakat is mandatory. We'll pay the zakat. Okay, let's talk about zakat. Zakat becomes obligatory when you meet the certain threshold of money or assets and they're sitting idle for at least 1 year. If you're a millionaire and you have $1 million in the bank, but you move around that money, it's never sitting in one place. It's never $1 million in your bank. Sometimes you invest it, sometimes it comes back, and then you put it somewhere else, and then you use it, and then it keeps on coming back and forth. there can be no zakat on it. Zakat can only be on an asset that is sitting idle for at least 1 year. And many a times, people who are wealthy, they end up not paying zakat because many a times it's not meeting the very threshold. So if that's the only chanda you were thinking of spending in the way of Allah Ta'ala, many individuals will end up spending nothing at all. You know, I have access to the Jamaat Tajneed list and the chanda history. I can look back at least good 3-5 years of every individual in this Jamaat. And I have seen this, where I see names upon names upon names who don't even pay a single dollar in sadaqah. Forget zakat. They don't even pay a single dollar in sadaqah. Jamaati chande to dur ki baat hai. None whatsoever. Look, at the end of the day, people think that if they pay chanda, that they are doing Jamaat a favor. No, you're not. When I give chanda to Jamaat, I'm not doing Jamaat a single bit of favor. Jamaat is doing me a favor by accepting whatever financial donations or sacrifice I can present. If Allah Ta'ala, what's one of the punishments in Jamaat when somebody does something wrong? Jamaat says, okay, we're not going to accept chanda from this individual. You go to other masajid and ask them what is your concept of punishment. They say, oh, if you do something wrong, we might ask you to pay even more. Our Jamaat is different. We say if you do something wrong, we're not going to accept your chanda. Now imagine so many individuals. You know, alhamdulillah, I'm not going to give you the numbers, but you understand that here, our Jamaat is in very big numbers. Alhamdulillah. But ultimately, how many individuals are paying Tariq-e-Jadid chanda or Waqf-e-Jadid chanda? Every single year we have hundreds of people who don't pay a single dollar in Tariq-e-Jadid or Waqf-e-Jadid. When adults aren't paying anything, can we assume that they would be teaching their kids to spend in the way of Allah Ta'ala? Of course not. And then eventually it translates into the lack of tarbiyat of their children. Such children from such households then end up getting involved in drugs, dating, many other things. And such parents eventually do come. When it's time for their kids to get married, they come. They say, oh, it has happened with me. I was in a Jamaat for 5 years. One individual came and knocked on my door and says, looking for the local missionary. So I knew that this person doesn't know who I am. In this specific Jamaat, I spent 5 years. And I had never seen this person. And I asked, are you a local member of this Jamaat? He said, yes, I've been here for 20, 30 years, alhamdulillah. I was like, okay. I asked him, do you know which chapter you belong to? And he's like, he started thinking. I was like, just tell me the name of the local Sadr. And then he again goes, started thinking. He's like, just call the local missionary. And then I said, I am the local missionary. And I asked, you don't know who I am, sir? He's like, oh, I'm sorry. I was like, I've been here for 5 years. Every single Jummah, I lead Jummah in the masjid, the 5 daily prayers. The Eid, you've never seen me on Eid? And he said, no, I've not.
So it's your fault then.
It is my fault, I guess. But these are real cases, right? Whatever excuse we have, that we're busy in setting up life, we're trying to settle our families here. Yes, it's important to settle your families here, but what is more important? Their akhirat. You're sacrificing the akhirat of your children, and this is a losing trade. Don't do this. The next point is, and this would be point number 7. Hazrat Mian Sahib says, माओं का फर्ज है कि अपने बच्चों को हमेशा शिर्क खफी के गड्ढे में गिरने से होशियार रखें. दुनिया की ज़ाहिरी तदबीरों को इख्तियार करने के बावजूद उनका दिल हर वक्त इस जिंदा ईमान से मामूर रहना चाहिए कि सारी तदबीरों के पीछे खुदा का हाथ काम करता है और वही होता है जो मंजूर खुदा होता है. He says, point number 7 is that our mothers should teach the children about shirk khafi. Now shirk jali means, worshipping graves and worshipping people or worshipping idols. It's very obvious and apparent. Shirk khafi is something that you might not consider it to be shirk. Loving somebody the way you should be loving Allah Ta'ala is shirk. Fearing someone that you should be fearing Allah Ta'ala is considered shirk. There are many different forms of shirk. When you think that if you go to masjid, or if your child who goes to college or university goes for Jummah to the local masjid, that somehow their grades are going to be affected, they're not going to be successful in life, isn't that form of shirk? Because you're equating their success with them skipping on religious responsibilities that they have. Guess who pays the ultimate price? Same children. And when those children, in whose life religion plays zero role because of you, when they are in a position of authority and you are in your old senile age and you are now dependent on them, guess what? The morals that Islam teaches, those morals never got inculcated in them in the first place. Which reminds me of this story. When I was a child, I heard this story in school, and almost everyone may have heard this story. The story of the boy who was sitting with his father, and they were playing with one another. And his grandfather entered the room and said, "My dear son, it's really cold. Can you give us a blanket?" And the son turns to his son and says, "Go to the shed in the backyard and you'll see an old blanket. Bring that blanket." The son goes. It's a raggedy old blanket. He cuts it in half. And he gives that half-cut blanket to his grandfather. And his own dad says, "What are you doing? Why are you cutting this?" And he says, "Your dad is old. And in his old age, you're giving him an old raggedy blanket. I thought one day you're going to get old. And you're going to ask me for a blanket too. So I'm saving the other half of that old raggedy blanket for you." When we don't teach Islam to our kids, this is what happens. But it is equally important where the kids are learning Islam from. I can send my kids to a Maulvi, Ghair-Ahmadi Maulvi, and expect them to teach my kid Islam. What kind of Islam are they going to teach my kid? The Maulvi's Islam, where they think that it's absolutely okay to beat your wives. The Maulvi's Islam, where they teach that it's absolutely okay to lie in certain situations. The Maulvi's Islam that teaches hypocrisy. The Maulvi's Islam that lies through their teeth. The Maulvi's Islam that teaches that it's okay to curse Masih Maud alayhi salatu wassalam. And when we teach that type of Islam, when we send our kids to such institutions, guess what happens? That will be the Islam that these children will pick up. I'm not surprised when I see cases where children go away from Jamaat because their elders decided that they're going to send their kids to such institutions, to such Maulvis. This is what happens. जो बीज बोएंगे वही इवेंचुअली पौधा पैदा होगा, वही दरख्त निकलेगा. आप अगर बीज डालते हैं जमीन के अंदर केले का, तो आम का दरख्त नहीं पैदा होने लगा. What you're going to sow, that is exactly what you're going to reap. Some people say that, okay, what if in a certain place we don't have that academy? What if we don't have a proper Jamaat? What if we don't have a local missionary? In that case, is it not better to send our kids to non-MD institutions? No, it's not better. Absolutely not. People ask Masih Maud alayhi salam that, Huzur, we go to these places where I'm the only MD. What should I do about Jummah? What should I do about Salat bil Jamaat? Hazur said, read on your own. You're better off reading on your own than to go and associate with others. If they're going to corrupt your spirituality, then what good is this ibadat? The next point Hazrat Qamrul Anbiya radiyallahu ta'ala anhu taught us, he says, बच्चों को माँ बाप और दूसरे बुजुर्गों का अदब सिखाया जाए, खा वो रिश्तेदार हों या गैर रिश्तेदार और हमसाए हों या अजनबी. अदब दीनी तरीकत की जान है. Now look at this. And he goes on to say, फिर बच्चों के अंदर खुसूसियत से वालिदैन की इताअत और खिदमत और एहतराम का जज्बा पैदा किया जाए. इसकी तरफ से गफलत बरतने को हमारे आका सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने इस्लाम में गुनाह नंबर 2 शुमार किया. Teaching our kids the respect of the elders. Now, when we being young, if we are not taught to respect our parents, and this is where the family dynamics come in. If the father is bickering and poisoning the ears of the children against their mother, and the mother is doing the exact same thing against their father, guess what the children are going to learn? They're going to learn not to respect both of them. In broken homes where marriages end and they have children, guess what happens? This is what happens, unfortunately. And then there are times when either the father is saying, oh, your grandparents from your mother's side, they're like this and that. They would poison their children against their nanihal. And sometimes their mothers would be saying things against their dadehal, their father's side of the family. Again, we end up teaching our kids the wrong kind of things. Respect begets respect. No matter if you're at odds with your brothers and sisters, or your parents, or your in-laws, you do not let your kids say anything negative about these relations of yours. No matter what. Because if they're not respecting an elder today, tomorrow they will also not respect you. Point number 9. हर अहमदी माँ का फ़र्ज़ है कि वो बच्चों में सच बोलने की आदत पैदा करे. सदाकत तमाम नेकियों का मंबा और झूठ तमाम बदियों का मौलद है. सच बोलने वाला बच्चा खुदा का प्यारा और कौम की जीनत और ख़ानदान का फ़ख्र होता है. और कौले ज़ूर यानी झूठ से बढ़कर अखलाक में पस्ती पैदा करने वाली और बदी के नापाक अंडों को सीने वाली कोई चीज़ नहीं. Point number 9, he says, is in raising our children, is to teach our kids the significance of speaking truth. Even if speaking truth gets you in trouble, you still speak the truth. That's what Islam says. Islam says, speak the truth even if it means your parents getting in trouble for it, or even your own self getting in trouble for it. Even then you speak truth. Masih Maud Islam's example we've heard. There was a court case, he went, and the other side, Promised Messiah Islam's side was, I think, the plaintiff, and the defendant side said, whatever Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani Islam will say, we will accept. They knew that Masih Maud Islam is not going to lie. And this is before he became a Nabi. So he goes and he speaks the truth, ends up losing the case. And is coming back. His father had sent him to represent him in this case. And Promised Messiah lost the case. He spoke the truth, his father lost the case. They ended up losing some property or whatnot. And he's coming back and he's happiest man ever. And people looked at him smiling and they thought that maybe Mirza Sahib won the case. So they're coming to congratulate him. They're, congratulations, you won the case. They're like, no, I didn't win the case. He's like, so why are you smiling? He's like, because I didn't lie. This can only happen if you're taught from the very get-go that no matter what happens, speak the truth. In our homes, when we are raising our kids, oftentimes we ask our kid, oh, did you do this? When the kid says yes, we slap them. We yell at them. We punish them. So what do they pick? What do they learn? Don't speak the truth. If you speak the truth, you're going to get a slap. If you speak the truth, this is what's going to happen. You're going to get punished. Do the opposite. Ask them, did you do this? And when they say yes, give them a big hug. Say, you know what, I'm really proud of you. You spoke truth, and this tells me that, you're mindful that Allah Ta'ala is watching. We can all make mistakes. Papa makes mistakes, Mama makes mistakes. But the fact that you did not lie tells me that you're a very good child. Reward them when they do something good. How quick we are in punishing children when they do something wrong. But why aren't we rewarding kids when they do something right? And last but not least, point number 10, he says, माँ बाप का फ़र्ज़ है कि हमेशा अपनी औलाद की तरबियत के लिए खुदा के हुजूर दुआ करते रहें कि वो उन्हें नेकी के रास्ते पर कायम रखे और दीन और दुनिया की तरक्की अता करे और उनका हाफिज़ व नासिर हो। ये वो 10 बुनियादी बातें हैं जो औलाद की तरबियत के लिए नहायत ज़रूरी हैं, और ये वो बीज है जो अहमदी माओं के हाथों से हर अहमदी बच्चे के दिल में बोया जाना ज़रूरी है। वरना गो खुदा के रसूल तो बहरहाल गालिब होकर रहते हैं, मगर कम अज़ कम जहाँ तक इंसानी कोशिश और ज़ाहिरी असबाब का ताल्लुक है जमात की तरक्की, ई ख्यालस्तो महालस्तो जुनू। He says point number 10 is pray. All first 9 points were our tadbir, were actions that we can take. Point number 9 is our reliance on Allah Ta'ala. That Allah Ta'ala, we've done our part, now the ball is in your court. You cannot do this, that you don't do your part and then says Allah Ta'ala, the ball is in your court. That is also a type of shirk, because then you're trying to test Allah Ta'ala. So Masih Maud says, do your part, which is called tadbir, and then put your reliance on Allah Ta'ala. Then do your tawakkul on Allah Ta'ala, then make the dua. So first you have to do these 9 things, and then come to the 10th point, which is pray. May Allah Ta'ala give me and all of you the ability to raise our children in the best possible manner, because ultimately they're not our kids. They are amanat of Masih Maud alayhi salam. They are the amanat of Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. We have to raise the future of Ahmadiyyat in our homes. We have to raise the likes of Sahaba in our household. That is a very big responsibility, and we cannot discharge that responsibility by looking outside the Jamaat for marriage. May Allah Ta'ala give us true wisdom. May Allah Ta'ala give us the true insight and the true ability to abide by all these points. Ameen. Wa akhiru dawana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alamin.
Muhammadur Rasulullah.